Are you guys all squared away?
Thank you, sir.
Yep. All set? No worries. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Assistant Commissioner Mick Hermans from Victoria Police Counter-Terrorism Command, and I'm here with Assistant Commissioner Scott Lee from the Australian Federal Police. I'm here to talk about Operation Loon, Beak, which was resolved this morning with the arrest of 3 males in Northwest Metro region. The operation was conducted by the Joint Counter-Terrorism Team, which comprises of the Australian Federal Police, the Victoria Police, and the Australian Security and Intelligence Organisation. The operation resulted in the arrest of 3 men, a 19-year-old male from Epping, a 20-year-old male from Epping, and a 16-year-old male from Glenroy. The younger male was interviewed and released earlier this afternoon. Victoria Police will continue to engage with this young man, offer him support and hopefully divert him away from the activity that saw him come to our attention this morning. The 19-year-old and the 20-year-old remain in the custody of the Joint Counter-Terrorism Team and interviews are continuing. I'd like to reassure the Victorian community that the activity we took this morning went in a wholesome and fulsome manner in addressing the risk that these trio represented. I'm available with AC Scott Lee to take questions in relation to this matter, but I hope you'll understand that the members are still, or the persons of interest are still in custody, and that may limit to some extent the exploration that we can engage in regarding your questioning. Thank you very much.
Is this ready for questions?
Yes.
Yeah, so is this, would you categorise this as right-wing extremism?
No, it's a religious-based ideology.
Sorry, to make it complicated, just for the framing.
Yep, no problem. Not right-wing extremism in this case, ideology based on religious extremism.
Okay, which religion?
It really makes no difference to us, ideology that's extremist, but it's fair to say that it's standard in terms of our basic investigations.
Is it Islamic?
It is Islamic, but let me make it very clear that we target the crime, not the ideology. It makes no difference to us where the investigation leads.
What were the allegations or the threats that were being made, I'm assuming against the public?
No, well, what we investigated were 2 incidents, one related to a fire on the 18th of February and an assault on the 10th of March. And the circumstances of those 2 incidents are being investigated to determine the extent to which they may or may not lead to terrorism charges.
Can you give us a bit more background on those incidents? Where were they and what happened?
Given that the matter is still under investigation and will ultimately most likely appear before the courts to be explored, I'm not going to go into them in greater detail.
Can you tell us basics like the general suburb, the location of where they
The fire was started in bushland activity approximately 30 minutes from the Epping area, and the assault occurred in metropolitan Melbourne. Beyond that, I'm not prepared to say.
So you believe that those were motivated attacks?
Yes, obviously, again, without going into extensive detail, there's ideology that motivates, that makes us believe that it's linked to extremist activity.
And was the assault in a public place or a private residence?
It was in a public place, correct.
So, what is it that made you connect, or what was it that led you to believe that this was leading perhaps towards a larger incident?
So we receive intelligence from a variety of areas, and we received intelligence in relation to a person of interest in this matter. As a result of that, the Security Investigations Unit initially conducted an investigation. Those initial inquiries led us to believe that perhaps the investigation was more serious than, I suppose, initially led to the matter being handled outside of the remit of the JCTT. As the serious nature of those investigations manifested itself, we transitioned the investigation to the Joint Counter-Terrorism Team.
So were those initial incidents, the fire and the assault, they weren't originally investigated by the Joint Counter-Terrorism Team?
No, correct. We received information that suggested that their ideology would be of concern to the Victorian community, and as a result of that we conducted an investigation against one POI, which led us to the 3 POIs that were arrested today. When I say POIs, I apologise, but persons of interest.
Do you anticipate the 20-year-old male will also be charged this afternoon?
It's hard to say at this stage. They are currently being interviewed. The one potential outcome of that interview is that they may face terrorism charges, but it's not for me to say at this time.
What charges are they likely to be looking at?
It could relate to attempted terrorism or acts in preparation of terrorism, but again, without conducting the interview and having the full circumstances of the interview at my disposal, it's hard to say at this time.
What are the penalties for those charges?
Significant penalties, ranging up to and including life imprisonment.
And when you say that the preparation of terrorism is a considered charge, what leads you to believe that? What gave you...
Again, I'm not going to go into the significant details, but if you link it back to what I've referred to in terms of a fire and an assault, based with the ideology that we believe led to those 2 acts, that's ultimately where you would end with a terrorism charge or an attempted terrorism charge or acts in preparation of terrorism.
Was it an assault on an individual or multiple people?
No, one individual.
What's the connection? Is there a relationship, or what's the connection between the 3 people who were arrested?
So I'm not going to disclose that at this time.
Are they related?
So 2 of them are related. One of them has a connection that we established through the investigation.
Do you mind if I just ask AFP
Absolutely.
a question?
Scott, thanks, Nick.
Scott, could you please just talk us through what your involvement is with this?
Sure. So I think today's activity reflects the work of the Joint Counter-Terrorism team here in Victoria. It's an extremely strong partnership that we have between Victoria Police, ASIO and the AFP, as Assistant Commissioner Herman's outlined. Throughout the COVID period, the national threat level has remained unchanged. So the Joint Counter-Terrorism teams, including here in Victoria, has continued throughout that COVID period to investigate and disrupt terrorism and to ensure the safety of the public. So as has been outlined, when the threat level or the potential threat level reached a point, this matter was referred into the Joint Counter-Terrorism team, and that's then become an investigation that's been undertaken through that team, which has involved all the agencies and obviously resulted in the action that's been taken today, and with the ongoing interviews, etc., that has occurred to ensure that we maintain the protection of the public.
We've been told that we've got a 20-year-old, 19-year-old, and there was originally a 16-year-old in custody. How concerning is it that these are quite young people, young men?
Yeah, it's a phenomenon that we see regularly now with our counter-terrorism investigations, regardless of the ideology, where we have people that are younger and younger in our community, where we are taking police action in relation to them, where we can disrupt their activity, ensure that the threat to the community is mitigated. We can do that appropriately between the police agencies and ASIO.
Why is it a phenomenon?
I think there's a range of factors, but I think one that can't be underestimated is the magnification of the online environment and what that means for the radicalisation of these young individuals. And that's certainly what we've seen throughout the COVID period as people have come out of the physical world and been in isolation and driven into the online environment to a degree, and that's exacerbated some of the radicalisation that we've seen, not only around the country but also globally in terms of the counter-terrorism environment. So
would you be alleging that these alleged incidents were essentially self-generated acts or were directed?
Certainly, as has been outlined already, there is an ideology, a violent extremist ideology that has caused us concern. And it's as a result of that ideology that we are looking at these incidents being connected to a terrorism motivation and may result, depending on the outcomes of the interviews and the action that remains ongoing by the Joint Counter-Terrorism teams, that might result in terrorism offences potentially later on today.
Was the community at threat, and is there any ongoing threat to the public? Should they be worried?
No, I think as AC Hermans has outlined, the community can be reassured that we've taken action at an early stage to ensure that there is no risk to the public, and we're confident that the action that we've taken today has mitigated that risk.
So do these people who were originally in custody, do they have siblings that you'll be keeping an eye on, family members, cousins?
There's a range of ongoing inquiries, but I won't. I think, as has already been outlined, we won't go into that detail. But as we've explained, the 3 individuals that we've taken action on today, we're comfortable that that has contained the risk, and there's no other person that's involved.
So let's say with the fire, was it the nature of the fire, the target of the fire that sort of raised the red flag, or was it simply the people involved?
When we investigate terrorism, there's a range of key components to that type of offending, but certainly from our perspective, it's the violent extremism that's aligned to that terrorism motivation and the conduct. And there's, without going into the detail of it, there are certain aspects to the lighting of the fire that leads us to suspect it was a terrorism motivation, but we can't go into any more of that detail at this time.
Why are you not able to go into that kind of detail? This is not the case with other kinds of charges.
I think at the moment we still have people who are being interviewed. Those people are still yet to be charged, so that while the investigation remains ongoing, we can't go into that detail at the moment.
Can you run us through a little bit more about this morning's arrests, how they were carried out, maybe what officers were involved?
Yep, thank you. Fundamentally, it was the Joint Counter-Terrorism team, supported by Victoria Police, most notably the Security Investigations Unit. They were pretty straightforward arrests. We attended at their home address, and the 3 young men were taken into custody.
Were they all at the same house?
No.
2 different houses, yeah.
Correct.
Were Special Operations Group used at all for any of your...
No, we did not use police tactical groups. We simply used AFP and Victoria Police personnel.
Were you in contact with these people beforehand, or was it more of a raid?
No, it's the matter had been previously investigated by the Security Investigations Unit of Victoria Police. We had to some extent engaged with the persons of interest, and part of that engagement and investigation, as has been referred to, led us to suspect that I suppose the threat and risk related to the potential activity justified intervention at this time.
And we know that there's those 2 incidents you've spoken generally about, but were you fearful that there was something planned for the future?
So, I suppose when people who are demonstrating that ideology engage in multiple incidents that we become aware of, and in general, it's a pretty well-known fact that as soon as we have sufficient evidence to intervene, we do so, because terrorism investigations are all about disruption.
Were their houses raided afterwards, and was there evidence found at the homes?
So the premises were searched at the time of arrest, and the extent to which physical evidence was located, I'm unaware.
Were there charges relating to the fire and the assault?
So the investigation today will culminate in interviews relating to those 2 incidents. They had not previously been the subject of interview.
So there was no arrest there, those 2 incidents, alleged incidents, only recently
came to the light of investigators as a result of prior engagement and investigations, correct.
Do you believe these people may have been radicalised online?
So, look, it's possible. There's a strong online element to most of our investigations. And as AC Lee has indicated, particularly the younger demographic, and to some extent you could say it's been exacerbated by COVID. They spend a lot of time on the internet, and the opportunity for extremist ideology to be transferred nationally and internationally is easily facilitated within that environment.
And how concerning is it for you, their ages?
That's very concerning. And in general, I would say that we are seeing a younger demographic, and that may or may not be on the back of easy access to social media. We are spending a lot of time not just based on arrest intervention, but more therapeutic interventions like countering violent extremism. And even within that demographic, which is all about support and engagement, we are seeing younger age groups.
There's a lot of feedback from the public about not knowing exactly what these 2 allegations relate to. What's your message to them? There's a lot of anger about them not knowing.
Yep, and look, I can understand that, but the reality is we base our activity solely on risk. We saw a risk profile that was increasing, and we took action. It's not for me to explore the circumstances of those events, particularly as it may end up in court. The exploration of that activity, the subject of which may be charges, is better undertaken within a court.
But it'll be alleged what those
Absolutely it will.
they were.
Correct.
So we'll find that out later today.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just there. Was he from Glenroy or?
I've got Pascoe Vale.
Yeah,
Pascoe Vale,
Yes.
the younger Vale, Epping.
it was Pascoe.
Okay, let's go back. Thank you.
Oh, hang on.
You said
Yes.
Glenroy.
You said Glenroy.
Sorry, Glenroy, I apologise.
It was Pascoe Vale.
So it is Pascoe Vale?
Yes.
Beautiful.